Hello. In this video, I want to show how to make a custom Docker image using a Docker file when you're not basing that image on anything. You just want to build your own file system and have the container only hooked up to whatever files you add, and then the Linux kernel, of course. So to do that, I'll open up this repository you should be familiar with, where we have used shell scripts to automate Docker tasks with the CLI, and then we have created a Docker file to precompile some Go code and then run that code at runtime. So I'm going to make a new Docker file, and this is going to be called pocketbase.docker file. And the reason I'm calling it that is because I'm going to make this container to run a precompiled binary from the internet that is Pocketbase. So Pocketbase is an all-in-one backend solution for your web apps, where it has a SQLite database and an admin UI where you can manage your database. It's just nice if you want to focus on front end, you can use this. It's not quite at 1.0, so it's still sort of experimental. But the nice thing about this product is that it doesn't install on your system like a typical installer. You simply download a zip file and then you extract that, and the binary for your system architecture, your operating system rather, is right there in that zip folder. So if I wanted to run this on Windows, I would have to download the Windows version, but I'm going to run a Linux container, so I'll download the Linux version. And then I can go and check that out and extract it using the File Explorer, and inside of there I will see a binary which is about 41 megabytes, and then just some markdown text about that file. And so the way that you run that is simply to execute that binary on the command line. And so I know if I were to, for example, open this in my terminal and do /pocketbase, it wouldn't work because I'm on the wrong operating system. This is not made for my Windows kernel, it's made for a Linux kernel. So I'm going to copy this with Control-C or the context menu, and then go to VS Code, and I'm simply going to drop this right here. I'll do Control-V after clicking on this right here, and it'll put it there. I'm going to create a new folder and just call this executables, and I'm going to drop Pocketbase into executables, and then we can use this file to put inside of a custom Docker container. So you're familiar with how to create a custom Docker container based on an image from Docker Hub, but what if you want to start completely with nothing? Well, it would be challenging because this base operating system is going to have maybe your bash shell or your sh shell. It's going to have a path variable and a binary folder and maybe a home folder and all these different things you might be familiar with the Linux operating system. But if you have a really standalone executable like this Pocketbase file, you can simply run that inside of a container. So we can see how you could use Pocketbase just with a Docker run command by creating a script for that. So let's just create a script for new file, and we'll just call it pocketbase.sh. And in here we will place a Docker run command like this. So the only changes I've made to this repository that you may not have seen, if I do a git log, you'll see I made the default should be not to remove the image. So let's do a little detective work, practice your git commit skills. If we go to commits in GitHub and we see default should not remove the image, in that file I simply edited the shell script and I commented in this line that was commented. I commented out this line that was currently running where it removes the Golang image after it runs it. So I've simply made that so that it matches what the README says. So that's why my commit message is useful there. But what we're going to do is run, I'm going to do Alt-Z to wrap this around, and we're going to do docker run rm. We'll call it pb for Pocket Base, pbc, and our working directory will be, we don't know, so let's drop this out and just make it slash for now. And for volumes, we are going to want a volume, but we don't know where yet, so let's just pull this out and comment it out. And then we're going to want to run the container of the image that we're going to run. Let's just start with something like just a basic Linux distribution. So we could use our Alpine, our basic Alpine we use to run a Go executable, for example. And turns out Pocket Base is actually made in Go too, so funny coincidence. So we can use that image right there, and then we can just run, sure, let's run sh or bin sh, and let's run it to get it interactive and see where we land at the root of the file system. So let's just run /script/pocketbase.sh, and you would have to make these executable on a Mac or Linux as well. And we'll do a ls pwd, we're in slash ls bin. Let's see if we can stat bin slash pb. Let's say we're going to call our Pocket Base, we'll call it pb inside the container, and so there's nothing there, which is good, so we can put our Pocket Base executable there when we run the container. So let's exit out of this, and so we're going to use working directory, doesn't really matter, so we can pull this out. We're going to do a volume just like that and drop this in, and it'll be pwd slash, it'll be the root will be pwd, print working directory from where we're running the script. Then we'll go into executables and pocketbase.sh, so I'll copy relative path right there and paste scripts and change that to a /, and then we're going to map that to /bin/bin/pb, and then we're going to run Golang. No, we don't want to run Golang, we just want to run Alpine, so we'll delete that container name, and then we're not going to run sh, but we'll just run pb, and let's see if this will run Pocket Base. Okay, so we're getting an exec format error. So that's the problem that we saw on, okay, so here's the issue where, what are we doing? We're copying a script into /bin pb, but really what we wanted to do is copy the executable. So I copied the wrong relative path, so I'll copy this and paste here. Change the slash to a /, and let's try again. So now it's mapping the executable Pocket Base into /bin pb, which /bin is usually on the system-wide path environment variable, so you don't even have to pass the full path when you call that command. You can just call the command, and in fact we get the output of Pocket Base CLI with no arguments. So like one thing you can do with Pocket Base is to serve, and that just runs the whoops, so I just passed that to my script. I would actually have to do it like this, pb serve, and then that would be the subcommand of Pocket Base or pb, which will start up a server and give you this. So it's now starting a server at HTTP localhost 8090. So if we click on that, we can see nothing loads, and that's because we haven't hooked up any ports. So typical problem to encounter. We can also very specifically say we want to allow, for Pocket Base, we want to say -http I think it's /HTTP, and then we'll say 0.0.0.0, meaning any IP address can connect to this, and we'll run it on localhost 80, the typical HTTP port inside the container. and then we can go ahead and map those ports to our system and do, or we just to illustrate this, I can show you this could be, let's say 90, 95, and then we will connect -p, we'll do 80 on localhost and connect that to port 95 inside the container. And so we'll control C, and then we will Pocket Base serve again. We're removing this container every time so we can reuse that PBC name, and it's going to give us this link. If we click on this and open it, it has a 0.0 IP address, which makes no sense because it's actually mapped to localhost. And it's not on 85, it's on 95, it's on 80. So we just remove that 80 port because 80 is the default for HTTP, and we get the Pocket Base admin UI to create your first user. And so you could go ahead and continue with that if you were using the Pocket Base app. So that was pretty great. We didn't really have to do anything. We just ran this inside of a container using a volume. But what if we wanted to create a custom Docker image that had this executable baked in and ready to go? So we could do that. So we'll comment this out and just say this is to run the Pocket Base, to run PB without a custom container, or a custom image. Yep, that's a better name, image. And then to create our own custom image, we'll need a Docker file. And so what you do when you don't want to start from an OS, like here, we were starting from the OS of Alpine 3.21.2. And so we of course can do that. We could say from this base image and then go and do all of our things. So for example, the suggestion here is to copy, and we can copy, we'll have to follow the format of the working directory where we're calling Docker build. So copy ./executables, just this path right here, copy relative path. Got a lot of files open, so let's close some of these down, close all, and just open the Docker file. Be ./executables/pocketbase, copy that to /bin/pb, and then we can say the entry point is pb, and that way people can actually add their own commands to the end of that, or we can pass a default command which will be serve, and we'll also pass we'll pass the argument we had before, which was somewhere we have serve HTTP guess we put that in the shell script, right? HTTP this. So we essentially want our ending command to look like this, and so we're using the entry point of PB right here, and we can actually just say PB because bin is going to be on the system-wide path. And then our subcommand, which we can then override when we run the container, will be serve, and we'll pass HTTP, and we'll pass 0095 as our defaults here. And that way this can work, and then we'll even tell them expose 95 TCP, because this HTTP is TCP traffic, so we're not actually connecting the port to anything here. We're just telling users of this image, hey, we intend to use port 95 for TCP traffic. That's all this says. And we could put that above here as well. It may need to go above. I think it's fine there though. So by default, it's going to be essentially running this, whereas if we pass in, when we run the container, if we pass in after all the run part, we say serve and then something else, then it would go and change the default command. So let's go and see how we can do this. So maybe we should add a build command to here so that we can automate this nicely. So let's see, build the PB image, and right now we're just going to base this on Alpine. And so to run this one, to build this one, we did this. So we'll throw that in here. Docker build, the file is going to be the pocketbase.docker file, and the tag is going to be, let's call it PB for pocketbase, and we'll just call it latest, the typical tag for kind of the, when you say docker pull PB, it would get PB latest, so we'll just call it PB latest. And then let's just test this on its own. /scripts/pocketbase.sh, and it's going to build the container and copy in the executable to bin, and then hopefully we should be able to run docker run -rm name PBC ports 80 to 95. Yep, same deal here. We don't need the volume because the Pocketbase executable is actually inside of the image we built. And then we don't need IT because we're not interacting. And all we need to do is PB latest, and we don't need any command at the end because we already have the default command of serve HTTP 095, etc. So let's just comment this out so we don't have to rebuild and go ahead and execute the script. And we're getting something happening. Now let's see if we can click this link, open, and replace this with localhost. And there we go. We get the create your first superuser thing. So that is working just as intended. Now the great thing about this particular Pocketbase executable we got, as I mentioned, is completely self-contained. You know, sometimes self-contained binaries will also pull on shared object files in the operating system or different things to keep them smaller, but Pocketbase seems to be pretty self-contained, meaning it doesn't have any other dependencies except for the executable binary itself. And if we do du, which says disk usage, and we say -h for human readable, I have the du program installed in bash. I think by default git bash will give you that, and human readable disk usage for /executables, we'll see that it's about 41 megabytes, this whole folder of executables, which has the Pocketbase in it. And so that's, you know, a decently sized thing. And if we do Docker images, we can see that our PB latest image is 50.1 megabytes. So I'm going to, what you see is that that's bigger than the Pocketbase itself because it's having all of those Alpine components being added in. So let's retag PB latest. We'll say docker tag PB latest. I think this is the format. PB latest, and we'll retag it as PB Alpine. And then Docker images, there's PB Alpine. We still have PB latest, but now we can reuse that name for something else. And so we'll reuse that name by saying from, instead of Alpine, we're just going to start with absolutely nothing. And that's completely fine here because we're not running any executables or using any files in the file system that come with Alpine. Whereas when we did this Go program, we were relying on the Go compiler that comes with the Go Alpine image. And we can't really use the Go compiler if we don't have that base image unless we bring in the Go compiler ourselves. But here, the thing is pre-compiled for us, and we don't believe it to have any dependencies. So as long as we can get that executable inside of the image, then we can simply use it with no base operating system. And so I'm just going to say from scratch, which is a special image. If we look this up in Docker Hub, we'll look for scratch, and you'll see it's a Docker official image, and there's no tags. It's just nothing. It's just starting with nothing, basically. And it allows you to build your own custom images from zero byte size, essentially, very small. So if we were to, for example, comment all of this out and do a, let's see what happens if we try to just Docker build this. So we will comment out the run command and comment in the build command, which is going to use that PB latest tag. Let's do Docker images. And we see PB latest down here, 55 years ago, I guess the timestamp. That's when the date is set, and it's 0 bytes large, so it has no size at all. It has no contents, so that's very nice and minimal compared to Alpine, which has 7.83 megabytes. So you can see where we add the 8 megabytes to the 42 from Pocket Base. And then we get that 50 megabyte size. So if we want to cut down this 8 megabytes, if we don't need any of that stuff, we can simply build from scratch and then build in all these steps. We're just copying something from the local file system, we're setting the entry point in the command, and we're letting them know about what port we intend to use. So now we should be able to build again. We're running this build command, and if we do Docker images, we see that the Alpine image was 50 megabytes. This one is only 42.3. So it's essentially just the size of that executable. It's just a little bit of instructions to say what to do when this thing starts up, and other than that, it's nothing. It's just the executable wrapped in a Docker container and saying exactly what it is we want to do. So now we can comment back in our run command, and I can comment this out so we don't have to rebuild for now. And let's see if when we run that, it runs just the same. So we click this, and we change to localhost, and we get our admin again. So that worked perfectly, and we got to cut down all of that unnecessary stuff that was inside of that Alpine container, or that Alpine image, rather. And so now you can see how if you have an executable ready to go, it's very useful to be able to work from scratch and build your own custom container. And so somebody, all they have to do is have the executable that they need, and then they can have your Docker file, and they can build a container that will be able to serve this particular file, which remember, executables / Pocket Base does not run on Windows, but it can easily run on Windows through Docker if we have this Docker file right here. Now, just a little housekeeping to do. If I docker ps, or sorry, ls git status, we'll see we have some changes, the new Docker file, the executable. Now, this is 40 some megabytes, so I don't really want to keep this executables folder here, so I'm going to create another git ignore. I'll just copy this to the root, and I'll change this to executables. And this should git ignore that executables folder, and that way neither the folder itself nor the executable Pocket Base will get pushed up to Git. And I can tell my users if they want to use this. So I can say custom Docker image, we'll say for that previous one it is go runner, and then I'll say custom Docker image Pocket Base runner from scratch. So I'll add a prerequisites that you'll have to bash, say mkdir executables, and then they will have to place download, extract, and place the Pocket Base binary named as such into executables. And this is a link to the executables folder, so that when they're reading this, they can just click that and see the folder we're talking about. Although this link won't work in GitHub because there is not going to be an executables folder. So we could say, let's change our git ignore to ignore /star, it'll ignore everything inside of executables but not the folder itself. So then we can remove from the README that they don't have to make that directory, they'll just have to put it into that directory. So we'll give them that empty directory and they'll just know that Pocketbase has to go in there. And then we'll say running. They can simply do bash. They should be able to run what we ran, which was scripts.pocketbase.sh. And we'll put some notes. Change the command passed to Docker run single tick marks to get that code block in line, to change the Pocketbase command line Pocketbase command, and we can say C, and then we'll give a link to the Docker file where they have an example of what that looks like. So I'll say /docker/docker/pocketbase.docker file, C pocketbase.docker file, and they can click that link and see the file where they see an example command happening right there. This is the command args passed to the PBX executable. So pretty well documented there. We tell what's happening, prerequisites, you got to download the binary to build this, and then do that. Git status, say git add dot git status, git commit -m, adding Pocketbase runner feature. Git push. Alright, so now you've seen how to build an image completely from scratch when you have some standalone file system that can operate on its own without any dependencies from an operating system image. You may have more than just a single file, but this is a really simple example where we just take a standalone executable and we copy it in, and then we can have a super minimal Docker image built out from that scratch container and then just containing only the files that we need. So that should wrap it up for this video. Thank you for watching.